Well, hello and welcome back to yet another episode on Soko Chain. We are a podcast where we unpack people, ideas, and infrastructures that are shaping the Africa's blockchain and digital asset ecosystem. Today's conversation is a special one because we are moving beyond headlines and the hype. We're talking about how money actually moves and how liquidity is managed and why stablecoins. I'm sure we've all heard about stablecoins in one conversation or another. So today we're talking about how stablecoins are becoming a serious financial tool, especially here in Africa. And in today's conversation, I'm joined by Cynthia Wanjiku, who is the CEO and co-founder of Simple Innovations. Cynthia is a seasoned treasury, markets, and liquidity profession with over 15 years of experience across leading financial institutions in Kenya. She's led asset and liability management, treasury operations, FX risk management, and regulatory compliance at institutions such as EcoBank here in Kenya. In this episode, we explore Cynthia's journey from traditional banking into blockchain, into the blockchain ecosystem, what stablecoin adoption really looks like in Kenya and across Africa, and why treasury and financial institutions and also business can no longer afford to ignore this shift. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest on stage. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Faith. How are you?
I'm very well. How have you been?
I've been well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. Looking forward.
I'm really looking forward to learn as well and to the conversation we're going to have today is a conversation that we've had, or it's a conversation that is now moving around a lot. And that is stable coins and cross-border payments and remittance and all of that. And I'm glad having this conversation with you and also to just into from your background from traditional banking into now the blockchain and stablecoin ecosystem. So let's start with your journey. How did your story in blockchain start? When was the first time you heard about blockchain technology?
Thank you, Faith. Thank you for that really warm introduction, and I'm happy to be here, happy to have this conversation with you. So I think my first exposure or rather introduction to blockchain was, I think, like the majority of the people, where you read about it online, and especially the age of, Bitcoin speculation and all those stories around how, Bitcoin is so erratic and volatile. So that was the first time I sort of heard about crypto blockchain. However, the real now exposure and the real, introduction to the space was last year. And it was through a conversation with a friend and former colleague who is in this space. And it was quite eye-opening because at that time, we were trying to purchase something from Japan. And we had tried to do it through the bank, the traditional system. And it had taken us 3 days, for the funds to get to the supplier. And so through my conversation with with my friend and former colleague, and he was explaining to me how this infrastructure works. And we sort of said, let's try and do this transaction using, stable coins, right? And we were surprised because the funds were there instantly, zero delays, zero friction. And I sort of thought, like, this is one of those topics that sounds so abstract until you see it in action. And then now you're like, oh, this is actually something, and it's actually something that works. So that was last year, and that was sort of my first real experience with stable coins.
That's quite interesting. I want to understand, as much as you said what drew you into wanting to pay more attention was the evidence of faster transaction, and we will get to that. But I just want to understand now the complete shift coming from traditional banking. That is an area that is very conventional. There's usually a lot of hesitation when it comes to this industry. Even with your understanding from from a banker's perspective, with the cautionary notice that had been put there by the governor of Central Bank a couple of years ago, then taking that shift from that with that in mind, that this is something that from where I was working, we were not allowed to interact with these assets. Then transitioning into setting up your own company so that you can be able to offer these services. How did that come about?
So that's a very good question. So, like you've introduced me, I spent a big part of my career at EcoBank, across different departments and different sectors. I started as a relationship manager, and then I now moved to the treasury department where I was a treasury dealer, and then moved on to assets and liabilities management. And like you're saying, the banking system is very, very traditional. And so, like I mentioned, when I managed to do the transaction, the transaction I just spoke about last year, the first thing that caught my attention, I mean, far from what I know the industry for, which it was speculation, it was the speed and the idea that payments can happen based on on agreed rules on chain. And from a treasury and especially risk perspective, that's very huge because it makes payments less uncertain. You're able to plan for your cash better, and it reduces operational drag that a lot of companies face when they are trying to do cross-border payments. So to just get into detail now, how we got to simple innovations, and it was more of I like to call it fate, or rather a lot of alignment, sort of like being in the right place at the right time. Because around the time that now I started exploring the space and like reading more about it and wanting to know how does this infrastructure work. So a friend of mine who I've known for a couple of years introduced me to some people who are now my co-founders, and they were looking to build in the FX space, not necessarily in the stablecoin space, but they were looking to build a solution around FX. And through my conversations and what I had learned about this infrastructure and how I think it's the best thing to happen in Africa, we sort of now started getting into discussions with now my co-founders and working sessions. And we sort of like now aligned on the problem that we wanted to address, to solve, yes. And that's how Simple Innovation, SIL, was born last year, 2025.
And what would you tell is the key problem that you want to solve?
So Simple Innovation, we are looking to tackle a practical gap that we identified in the market. And that gap is around better treasury and liquidity management, especially for African businesses who are operating across countries and across borders and multi-currencies. So that is the main problem that we identified that we are hoping to.
Interesting. Before we proceed, you can just give our viewers a brief explanation of what treasury and liquidity is, more so because we have an understanding of what treasury is and what liquidity is vaguely, because liquidity is having cash flow.
Yes.
But is it any different when it comes to crypto? And if it's any different, how is it, and where is the difference? To just have an understanding as we proceed with the conversation.
Okay, good. Thank you for that question, Faith. So when you're looking at treasury, let me start with treasury, because treasury is usually the nervous system of a business, because here we are talking about cash positioning, we're talking about forecasting, we're talking about, obligations and ensuring that the obligations of the business are met in a timely and especially cost-effective manner. I think this is the key point that most businesses are looking to tackle when you talk about treasury. Now, when we come to liquidity and so to say cash visibility, it is how is your cash working for you? Yeah. So in most companies, if you don't have, a clear visibility of how cash is working, then what happens is you either keep excess cash, or you keep cash that is below what you need, and that is not ideal for most businesses. So in a nutshell, that's what I'd say about liquidity, because they say cash is king. For any business to survive, you need cash. So you need to know where is the cash, how is it moving, how is it working for you, so to say the working capital of a business.
That is really good.
I hope I've answered. I hope I've answered you.
Yes, you have. And I hope our viewers have now a perspective into what liquidity and treasury really means in this industry within the blockchain and crypto ecosystem. But what I would want to understand is why Simple Innovations, why you and your co-founders found it necessary for Africans to, or rather for you to solve this particular problem of liquidity and treasury in Africa. Why the need to solve that? Because that's a very specific problem, because you find other people are doing they're doing so many things, cross-border payments, on-ramp, off-ramp, whatever, like so many things. But for you to just look and see, people are facing liquidity and treasury, this is why I want to solve.
Okay, so let me backtrack a bit and just tell you what we do at Simple Innovation. So we are an OTC desk based in Nairobi. So we offer on-ramp and off-ramp solutions for our clients, especially the B2B space. And then we offer cross-border payment solutions and liquidity solutions, just like we were talking about. So for Africa, the Africa market is really growing. Fintechs are really scaling. Trade is becoming more regional. However, the tools for liquidity management and FX risk are still behind. We are still dealing with the traditional, the traditional banking rails, which have proven to be less effective in the space that Africa is in now. So the focus for Simple Innovation is to help businesses run treasury in a more real-time, more data-driven and resilient way, so that they can have stronger visibility for their cash, you can have tighter liquidity controls and better FX management. And that, how does this affect the bottom line of a company? It's always in the positive because it leads to a lot of cost savings. You're managing your liquidity better. You're not over buffering your cash, so that cash can be used for other purposes to, improve the revenue base. So that's what I'd say about what we're trying to tackle at Simple Innovations.
Interesting. You've mentioned something about traditional banking and traditional financial systems are finding, or rather they have challenges when it comes to cross-border payments. And what are some of those limitations that they have that Simple Innovations and with the help of Stablecoin is solving? We mentioned one that drew you into the ecosystem, and that was speed. Money being able to send cross-border very fast. What limitations are there, and Simple Innovation is coming in as a solution to these limitations?
Okay. I mean, traditional finance is good because that is what has kept us, in this space up until a few years ago. So traditional finance is definitely has its good side, especially it has very strong controls and consumer protection. But when it comes to cross-border, it often struggles with speed. Yeah. It struggles with cross-border flow, the efficiency. Yes. And then for businesses who are operating across markets, this shows up as delayed settlements, higher effects and transaction costs, yeah, limited transparency because now you're dealing, there's another layer added of correspondent banks, so you don't know where your money is. You've made a transfer, but it's somewhere. It has not reached the recipient, but the funds are somewhere, either in a correspondent bank. You really do not have visibility, yeah? And a lot of what businesses call finance problems are really liquidity problems. Sorry, that means your cash arriving later than expected, money getting stuck in transit, like I've just said, settlement delays, you're not certain, yeah, and affects costs that actually now drain into the value of the business. So that's what I'd say is the difference between traditional finance and this stablecoin infrastructure.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, and I like what you've said. The fact that we cannot look down or dismiss traditional financial
yes.
systems. Yeah, because it's through them that we are here, and I like saying the innovation is coming. It's not coming to do away with traditional financial systems. It's just an integration, and this is tied to borrowing from each other, because part of what we are even working on in this system is heavily built on what already exists. So it's not something, we can't come and say, oh,
to replace
now,
it.
we are here to replace. No.
Yeah.
It's a collaboration effort, and we want both to suffice and to exist.
Completely.
So you've mentioned the importance of cash and importance of liquidity in businesses, because as you've said, that's the heartbeat of any business. If you don't have money going, then
you can't survive. Exactly.
So Africa is a very interesting use case when it comes to stable coins, as you know. We're seeing a lot of stablecoin projects come to Africa, and because we know we've been having this problem of financial or rather money transfer, either from Kenya to other countries or even from abroad to Kenya or to other African markets.
Yeah.
So why would you say Africa needs better treasury and liquidity tools?
Like I think you've even just mentioned part of what I wanted to speak about, because Africa is multi-currency, it's a cross-border continent, with with high remittance flows, whether it's from within Africa or from the West, and we have a lot of SMEs operating across borders. So what does that mean? It means people, for Africa to grow and to realize its full potential, right? People need speed, they need affordability, they need reliability, and stablecoins are a very compelling case when it comes to, what businesses need in this era of trading, in this era of cross-border trading, in this era where SMEs are not just in one country, and not even SMEs. Even if you look at companies from the West, if they come to Africa, they need to move money from Africa and move some money back home, right? So stable coins are a compelling case, whether in Africa or across the world. They truly have come to change the game.
That's quite true, and I like that we are solving those problems one day at a time, and we live to see a world where this is fully adopted, where we are trying to solve other problems that we've not even foreseen. So from where you sit, I feel like you sit in a very unique position because
Right.
you understand both traditional finance and decentralized finance in a very interesting way, because you've worked heavily 15 years within traditional finance.
Yes.
That's a very good experience. So from your perspective, what would you say is the view or even the perception that banks have when it comes to stable coins?
Well, I think I'll speak about the Kenyan market. So I think banks have been very cautious, which is very understandable, because you see, banks have a huge responsibility. They're responsible for systemic stability, of the banking industry, yes. And they're also responsible for consumer protection and, most importantly, compliance, right? So I think up until last year, when Kenya passed the VASP bill, banks were very cautious. And by cautious, I mean it's a space they did not want to touch, right? But since, late last year, now I think banks are more curious. We've had conversations with a few banks. So banks are now very curious about this, new technology. So I know some banks are exploring tokenization. They're curious about how fast payments are in this space. Yes. And they are also curious to see how they can support new rails, such that you're working together with companies in this space. You're working together with, for example, Simple Innovation, because I believe there's space to work together with the banks. It's not a competition, right? Yeah. So I'd say most banks right now are in exploratory, or I'd say education space. They are still learning more about, what this is. And I think as the vast regulation requirements become more clear and more mature, we'll have more structured pilots and definitely stronger interest from banks in this space.
Quite interesting. Yeah. You've mentioned about regulation, and from last year, we're seeing now banks is into the technology and even having discussions, as you said, having discussions with companies within the ecosystem.
Yeah.
What would you say is your view on regulation when it comes to responsible adoption of crypto now?
Okay. I mean, regulation truly is key, in my opinion, right? Because regulation builds trust. Yeah. Regulation is not anti-innovation if done well. It's what makes innovation scalable. Yeah. So I think I see the goal of innovation is to really bring a lot of clarity into this space. And by clarity, I mean around areas of AML, consumer protection, right? Reserve quality and audits, licensing, yes, and then especially how now stable coins interact with the existing payment systems, because like we said, we cannot do away with what we've been using. We cannot do away with a traditional payment system. So good regulation will tackle all these, sort of different things to fit them into the regulation, to ensure that the space is scalable and to help this innovation to grow.
Yeah, that's quite true. I like where we've headed, and we've really come from far to a point from a point where there's a cautionary notice to a point where we are right now, that banks are exploring
exactly
working, and even the point you've really mentioned, which is very key, education. They want to understand what is this
exactly,
because education is the key to also responsible adoption, because you have to understand what this technology is all about, what are its cons,
Yes.
So
You're spot on.
I want to hear from your perspective. What are the risks involved, or even the misunderstood fears? Because there's usually fear and speculation in uncertain markets. Let me
Of course.
that.
Yeah.
What are some of the risks that you personally you've encountered, or even you've heard from people that you engage with, that are hindrance for them adopting this technology?
Okay, thank you. I think the risks mainly border around lack of education. Yeah, number one. You see, if you don't know about something, then you find you don't want to touch it. Yeah, you're sort of like, I'm not sure about this. But I can say the key risks in this space, just like in every other market, there's no market without risks. And one of the risks I can mention is operational risk, where there's wallet security, management of your wallet. Of course, you should not give your keys to anybody, because that's like your password. It's like giving your ATM pin to somebody. So that is a risk, right? And then there's also, in the space, there's also issuer or reserve risk. Yeah, you need to know what is backing the stable coins. How are reserves held? Are the audits available? Are they reliable? Yeah. And then other than that, there's also regulatory risk. As African countries are coming up with regulation can also either be a hindrance or something to make the innovation scale and grow. So where regulation is unclear, it can create a lot of disruption in the space, and people sort of not wanting to touch, because the first thing they ask, are you regulated? Just in case something happens. Yeah, I think those are the key risks that I've sort of seen, or in the space.
Yeah, and those are quite notable risks because of what you said. But I feel like apart from the ones that are out of individuals' control, like when it comes to AML and all that, those requirements that organizations are required to have before for a license. But I feel like these other risks of knowledge, let me call them risks of lack of knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge
Because when you
gap.
have an understanding of a particular area, you know what to do and what not to do. You will know very well, don't give your keys, or you will know very well to analyze a specific wallet or even a specific provider to know if it is somebody that you can trust them to handle your transactions or not. And I like the way you're preempting our conversations, because you talked about governance and compliance. We've said regulation is part of compliance, because for you to be with the license, definitely you have to be compliant. You have to have your AMLs in order. You have to have your KYC in order. You have to do and all of that. What's the word? How attainable or how complex is it for startups to be able to handle all of these requirements that have been set by CBK and CMA when it comes to proper regulation and proper compliance? How is it from your perspective? Is it
From my perspective, it's really not that difficult, because there are tools that in this fintech space, there are tools that have been developed to help, like say in AML, to help in KYC, KYB. So it's just a matter of investing in these tools just to ensure that you're on the right side of the law, right? This space can also be quite tempting, where a customer comes and they're in a rush and they want to do a transaction. But just like in the traditional banking, you have to get your compliance is
Yeah.
key. Yeah, you do not mess with compliance. If you know you need to do KYC, please do it before you transact. So I don't think it's hard, it's not something that would be difficult to comply with. Yeah, it should be fine.
So people shouldn't look at it from a point of the government is setting these things to suppress innovation, or to slow down innovation, or better yet, to do away with
I know what you mean. Yeah.
or what is boiling. Yeah.
No, governance, controls, and compliance. With these three are key. Yeah. Because for this space, for us to be able to scale, for us to be able to connect to even the formal financial system, and for us to become investable, right, to attract international investors, then these three must be present. Yeah. Because this is what attracts banks, this is what attracts corporates and international investors into the African digital asset ecosystem, and it's what builds trust. So it's inevitable. We cannot escape it, and we should not look at it like, the government is coming to curtail our growth. No, not at all. It's going to make the space, it's going to make people trust in the infrastructure, and it's going to make the infrastructure and the space scalable. So it's a plus for us. It's a plus for the industry.
Interesting. I would want to get your view on these people who are degens, like they believe in decentralization. They don't want to be under any centralized power or anything, because the centralization is control. And I know everyone is free, and we have free will. Anyone can choose the direction that they pick.
Exactly. Yeah.
But from your perspective, if you were to advise somebody who is getting into the space and is just hearing these words being thrown around, there's centralization, there's decentralization, there's so many areas of venturing into, what is that one advice you'll give someone in order for them to feel safe within the crypto and blockchain ecosystem?
Okay, is this like an individual or just somebody in the or a corporate?
An individual. You can answer for both. You can answer for an individual and
let me answer for corporates, because at Simple Innovation, those are our main customers.
Yeah.
So for institutions, I would say that you need to build a use case for stablecoins, and the use cases, I've spoken about it. They are there, they are clear, right?
Yeah.
Because you should not get into this for the hype.
Yeah.
Because this space is there to solve a particular problem. So there's a use case to it. So for institutions, I'd say you look at the use case for your business, number one, right? Look at the risks involved. Number two, look at who you're partnering with, right?
Yeah.
Look at for example, look at the OTC desk that you're dealing with. Do they have a physical office? Do they have, who are the directors? Do just like if you are investing in shares, for example, that's the kind of due diligence you would do to sort of be like, okay, is this a good company to invest in? So for institutions, do the same thing. Yeah, treat this like any other financial infrastructure change. Yes, and not forgetting because treasury, compliance, and technology definitely must work together for this space to scale and for this space to grow. So that would be my advice to institutions looking to get into this space. Yeah.
That's really good advice. Do research, look at it like any other venture.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Just because it's new, it's something relatively new. we are not approaching it any different.
Exactly.
That's really good advice. So I just want to understand, with your view of how stablecoins are growing within, not only in Kenya, but Africa in general. We're seeing a lot of conversations around stablecoins and regulation, and all of this is helping us to solve the problems that we've highlighted throughout the conversation.
Yeah.
Where do you see Africa going in terms of crypto adoption generally, stablecoins included in this conversation? Where do you see us in the next couple of years? We can even use Kenya as an example with what you've said, banks coming in and having conversations with you. That's a very big, because had somebody told you this a couple of years ago,
Correct.
found it so far-fetched, what do you
That's
this
true.
is not something that looks like it's gonna happen. But now, if we can build castles in the air when it comes to this innovation, where do you see Africa in this specific industry?
Thanks, Faith. I mean, that's it's a good question, but it's also a bit hard to answer because this space is so huge. There's so much, you can do. So with the regulation, it makes, exploring the different things you can do in this space a bit better. And because you can get into tokenization, you can, I think in Africa, we'll have a lot of also local stable coins. That is definitely something I see, happening in Africa. So the space is really huge, Faith. And I think we just have to wait and see. I also do see a lot of collaborations. I see a lot of partnerships happening in the space, which is the key to growth. You cannot build alone. You cannot build alone. For you to build, and you see, we are building for Africa. So partnerships and collaborations is truly the way to go for the future.
That is quite true. And what you said, the industry is very huge. There's the whole of tokenization. That is an entire different
Exactly. We've not even touched on that.
Area on its own. Because even when we talk about crypto itself is very huge. Out of crypto, there is stable, and stable coins is an industry on its own, because there's these statistics that I saw that roughly 43% of all crypto transactions
in Africa.
In Africa, that's how much we are transacting. Even the other time, there was a publication on Daily Nation sometime last year on transaction worth billions of shillings. I'm not I don't quite remember the figure, but it showed a very strong use case. And I like that our conversation was centered around use case, because it shows even for you at Simple Innovation, you've not built out of speculation.
Exactly.
Out of hype. Because there's there's backup to what solution you're bringing. You can actually see, and there's testament to how the industry has evolved over time, and the transactions that are happening, the fact that people are able to do all those transactions. And by that time, it was not even a regulated market.
And now at least it's regulated. So
so obviously we'll definitely have more people, because as you've said, regulation is in alignment to trust. So people who are skeptical about doing this, or rather getting into the industry because I can't get unless, because there's just a lot of mistrust and amplification of the bad stories.
True. Actually, that's what it is. Amplification of the bad stories. Without focusing on the good.
Exactly. Because
and any industry. Sorry, Faith. And any industry has those bad stories, you know, even banking, even traditional banking, there are those
100%.
bad stories. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was saying we don't get enough appreciation of the good stories, because even like that, that's statistics that can't be, that doesn't make rounds to
Yes.
media, as compared to an exchange that scammed people. That will make rounds to a point where everyone, even somebody who doesn't know about crypto, will
I know.
say,
I know. That's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I really like where we are going in terms of adoption and also education. And is there anything that Simple Innovation is doing in regards to education when it comes to knowledge and making sure that people have an understanding of what this industry is all about?
Yes, that's a good question, Faith. That's part of what we want to focus on this quarter, and we are looking to partner with people in the education space, yeah, to sort of just tell people what blockchain is, how are stable coins used. I think education going forward is very key. We also
Yeah.
do hold sessions with our customers currently, just to educate them on and sort of like showcase how transaction works from start to the end. So, but this year we're definitely looking to do more, and we are open to collaborating, just to help educate Kenyans about
That,
about the
yeah,
space.
that's really good. We've said one of the areas to push adoption education, and that's really nice.
Yes.
Looking forward to that. As we wind up,
Yes.
this won't come off as an ambush, because there's this
Hope not.
yeah, we at Soccer Chain, we asked our guests to, if crypto adoption in Africa was a book,
Was a book.
yeah.
Wow.
What chapter will you say we are in right now?
Good question. If crypto adoption was a book. Okay,
Yeah.
I think because we are at the onset of regulation,
Yeah.
right? I think this year especially will be a lot of work for companies in this space, because like we said, regulation really is key to enable the market to grow. So I could say maybe we are in chapter 6 or 7, depending on how big the book is, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think once regulation is complete and we sort of have a clear idea on the requirements, and everyone has a clear indication on where they fall in the different licenses, then from there I can say we'll really move forward in the book. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll move ahead many chapters.
That's quite true. And I like what you said. We don't know the size of this book.
Exactly.
The book can be 100 chapters, it can be 10 chapters.
Yeah.
But yeah, with how we're seeing regulation, chapter 6, chapter 7 is quite substantial. Yeah, that's
because we've already identified the use cases. We know what the market is. We know what blockchain is. We know what stable coins are. We know how they can be used, in terms of trade, in terms of cross-border payments. So now from there, how do we scale, right? And that can only be determined once regulation is set.
That's true. That's true. That ties to what we said in the middle of the conversation, that regulation is not coming to stifle innovation. It's coming to scale and to grow.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We've come to the end of our conversation. How was it?
Oh, okay. Oh, that was. I don't know why I thought 1 hour would be so long. It actually wasn't. I feel like we could talk and talk some more, but well.
Yeah. 1 hour
It was a
usually goes
pleasure.
by very,
Yeah,
very
it
fast.
does.
To our listeners, Cynthia, where can they be able to find you? Where can you be able to find simple innovations to the corporates that are listening to this conversation?
Okay, good question. So we are on LinkedIn, Simple Innovations Limited. We also do have a website, simpleinnovations.co.
Okay.
And our offices are in Westlands, Western Heights,
Okay.
6th floor. So we have a physical presence. And our contact information is on our website, is on LinkedIn. I'm also available on LinkedIn. You can DM me. Yeah.
Okay. You'll send us the link to all those then
do
at the
that.
description box, yes, so that our viewers can be able to reach out to you guys if they have any questions, or if they would want to understand from a corporate perspective, how do we send money cross borders?
Yes.
Where that? All
We'll
right.
do that. Yeah.
It's really good. We've come to the end of our conversation today. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for this conversation. I think what we put out is how stablecoins have stopped being abstract when you look at them through a lens of treasury, liquidity, and financial operations. What we are seeing clearly is that stablecoins aren't just about crypto, they're about efficiency, visibility, and resilience, especially in markets like Africa, where cross-border payments and liquidity management are daily challenges. So to our listeners, thank you so much for listening to this conversation.